Sir Keir Starmer has rejected demands for an immediate general election after more than 700,000 people signed a petition. The petition on the official Parliament website called for a fresh ballot, which is not due until 2029, to be held following Labour's landslide victory in July last year. It said, "We want an immediate general election to be held. We think the majority need and want change." The petition has now received a response from the government after receiving well over the required 10,000 signatures. The response says, "This government was elected on a mandate of change at the July 2024 general election. Our full focus is on fixing the foundations, rebuilding Britain, and restoring public confidence in government." The Prime Minister can call a general election at a time of their choosing by requesting a dissolution of Parliament from the sovereign within the 5-year life of a Parliament. The government was elected by the British people on a mandate of change at the July 2024 general election. This government is fixing the foundations and delivering change with investment in reform to deliver growth, with more jobs, more money in people's pockets, to rebuild Britain and get the NHS back on its feet. This will be built on the strong foundations of a stable economy, national security, and secure borders as we put politics back in the service of working people. The Daily Star reports they added, on entering office, a £22 billion black hole was identified in the nation's finances. "We inherited unprecedented challenges, with crumbling public services and crippled public finances, but will deliver a decade of national renewal through our 5 missions: economic growth, fixing the NHS, safer streets, making Britain a clean energy superpower and opportunity for all." This is what was promised and is what we are delivering. The government's first budget freed up tens of billions of pounds to invest in Britain's future while lacking in stability, preventing devastating austerity in our public services and protecting working people's payslips. Mission-led government rejects the sticking plaster solutions of the past and unites public and private sectors, national, devolved, and local government, business, and unions, and the whole of civil society in a shared purpose. The government will continue to deliver the manifesto of change that it was elected on. It comes as a new YouGov poll shows that even among Labour voters, 50% disapprove of the government's performance so far. Next, Downing Street also pointed to what it described as the unprecedented challenges inherited from the previous Conservative administration. According to the government's account, Treasury officials identified a £22 billion gap in the public finances shortly after Labour took office. Ministers say this discovery has forced tough choices, but that the first budget avoided devastating austerity while unlocking tens of billions of pounds for long-term investments. "We inherited crumbling public services and crippled public finances," the statement continued. "We will deliver a decade of national renewal through our 5 missions. This is what was promised and is what we are delivering." Labour claims that its economic plan, built as mission-led government, is different from the sticking plaster solutions of the past. It says it will unite public and private sectors, national and local government, business, and unions in a shared purpose to deliver structural reform. However, a new YouGov poll released this week suggests that public satisfaction with the government's performance is already slipping. The survey found that 50% of Labour voters disapprove of the government's work so far, while just 38% approve. Among the general public, the numbers are worse. 57% disapprove, compared to 31% who approve. The top areas of dissatisfaction cited by respondents were continued NHS waiting list pressures, the perceived slow pace of economic improvement, a lack of visible progress on housing and transport. One Labour voter from Leeds, 42-year-old Sarah Milner, told the Daily Star, "I voted for change, but it feels like everything is taking too long. I'm not saying we need another election, but I do think the government needs to show results faster." The Conservatives, now the official opposition after suffering a historic defeat last year, have seized on the petition as evidence of buyer's remorse among the electorate. Shadow Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said, "People voted Labour in good faith, but the reality is that their promises were overambitious, undercosted, and now the country is paying the price. The public are right to demand a say on whether this experiment continues." Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey struck a more cautious tone, acknowledging the constitutional reality that Labour is entitled to govern until 2029, but warning that public patience is not unlimited. Scottish National Party Westminster leader Stephen Flynn went further, calling the petition a clear signal that Westminster is failing to deliver for Scotland. He reiterated his call for a second Scottish independence referendum. In the UK, petitions that gather over 100,000 signatures are considered for debate in Parliament, though they do not automatically trigger policy changes. At more than 700,000 signatures, this petition is one of the largest seen since the Brexit era. Dr. Hannah Ward, a political scientist at the University of Manchester, told the BBC that while such petitions rarely force immediate action, they can shift the political conversation and apply pressure on governing parties to accelerate delivery on their promises. She added, "The government will argue, quite fairly, that it has a mandate and that the constitutional system is designed for stability, not constant electoral churn." But politically, such a large expression of discontent so early in a parliamentary term is a warning sign. Sir Keir Starmer, who campaigned on a platform of service, stability, and national renewal, faces a delicate political balancing act. On one hand, he is under pressure from within his own party to demonstrate progress quickly, particularly on the NHS, housing, and cost of living issues. On the other, he has promised to govern with fiscal discipline, which means avoiding the kind of rapid-fire spending pledges that could spook markets or widen the deficit. Speaking to journalists at a manufacturing plant in Birmingham this week, Starmer dismissed the idea of an early election, saying, "The country voted for change last July, and they voted for a government that would see it through. That's exactly what we're going to do. My job is to deliver, not to constantly campaign. We've got 5 years to get Britain back on track, and we will." Labour's landslide in 2024 was built on a collapse in Conservative support following years of political instability, economic stagnation, and public sector strikes. Voters gave Starmer a commanding majority, with Labour winning more than 400 seats, the party's best performance since 1997. But inheriting power in difficult economic times has proven a double-edged sword. Inflation has fallen from the double-digit peaks of 2022, but remains stubbornly above the Bank of England's 2% target. Growth forecasts have been revised upward but remain modest, and public debt as a share of GDP is at its highest level since the early 1960s. The government's first budget prioritized investment in green energy, public transport infrastructure, and skills training. It also introduced targeted tax cuts for low and middle-income earners, funded partly by closing certain corporate tax loopholes. While these measures were welcomed by many economists, critics argue they are long-term solutions that will take years to bear fruit, leaving the government exposed to short-term voter impatience. Interviews conducted by The Guardian in key marginal seats suggest the public mood is mixed. In Wolverhampton, former Conservative voter David Williams, 54, said, "I didn't vote Labour, but I respect the result. My issue is they're not moving quick enough. Prices are still high. My GP wait time is still weeks. Why should we wait 5 years for another say? Conversely, In Newcastle, nurse Emily Cooper, 29, defended the government. "It's been just over a year. You can't fix 14 years of Tory mess overnight. I think people need to be patient." This polarization is reflected online, where the petition's growth has been fueled by both genuine calls for a vote and coordinated campaigns from opposition groups. Parliament's Petitions Committee has confirmed that the petition will be scheduled for debate in Westminster Hall in the coming months. While such debates are non-binding, they allow MPs to air public concerns and question ministers. Political analysts say that unless there is a dramatic collapse in government support or a major political scandal, Starmer is unlikely to call an election before at least 2027, when midterm momentum could favor a fresh mandate. For now, Labour's challenge is to convert its overwhelming electoral victory into tangible improvements in everyday life, while managing expectations in a climate of economic constraint. The petition for an immediate general election may not succeed in forcing one, but it is a powerful reminder of the pressures facing the Starmer government barely a year into its term. Labour entered Downing Street with a huge majority and a promise to rebuild Britain, but as history has shown, landslides can breed as much scrutiny as security. If Starmer cannot show visible progress soon, calls for a new vote, however constitutionally unlikely, will only grow louder. Until then, the Prime Minister's message is clear. The mandate of July 2024 stands, and the focus remains on delivery, not on returning to the campaign trail.